Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Corte Madera Candidates Night, sponsored by the Corte Madera Chamber of Commerce. I'm Stan Hoffman, Chamber President, and I am so happy that we have 5 amazing Corte Madera residents running for Town Council for the 3 open seats. Our candidates, Jim Andrews, Eli Beckman, Robert Lucarni, Pat Ravazio, and Rosa Thomas, are all members of the community and great assets, and we're lucky to have all of you here tonight. Tonight's meeting will be moderated by Dick Spotswood, and I'm going to turn the meeting over to Dick, and we'll get started. Dick, thank you for your support tonight.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. It's a great to have 5 candidates. I said earlier, 5 solid people running for council in the town. This is a pleasure to be part of a forum in which they all have a chance to respond to the questions of the public. First of all, everybody else, welcome. The upcoming election is going to start very soon because California has a 1 month voting period. Ballots will be mailed, I believe, tomorrow, and they'll be received depending on your postman, Monday or Tuesday. So we have a 1 month voting, which will end on November 8th, and you'll probably see returns very quickly that night, if not the first thing in the next morning. So don't forget to open your ballots and cast them. This evening, we're going to focus on the 5 candidates running for the town council right here in Corte Madera. Only one incumbent is running for re-election, Eli Beckman. 2 of the incumbents will not be running. So we have 3 seats. These are 4-year terms, and voters are enabled to vote for up to 3 seats. You can cast 1, 2, or 3 ballots, and that's it. But you can make 1, 2, or 3. You have your choice. Let's talk about the ground rules, though. Starting in alphabetical, each candidate will have a 2-minute opening statement to outline their qualification and experience. They can use their time any way they wish. Describe their platform, why they're running, what they'll do if elected, whatever they choose. That'll be followed by a Q&A session in which we have already received submitted questions from residents and also from myself and the chamber. Have added a couple of questions to the list. We'll keep time and indicate when you're at the proper end of your allocated time. We let you finish the sentence and maybe a sentence and a half, but it's pretty much the time. So we can get as many questions in as possible because we will end this on time. Nobody has to worry about what they'll do after 8 o'clock because we will be finished by 8 o'clock. Each candidate will be then allocated at the end after the questions, 2 minutes each to make their concluding remarks and to tell voters, why should you vote for me? Make your pitch. It's a chance. It's what people want to hear, and every voter wants to be asked for their vote. You'll have 2 minutes to do that. So that's the ground rules. You've known them in advance. You've seen most of the questions in advance, so you won't be too shocked. At least you've seen the initial questions. And so off we go. And we're going to start in alphabetical order with Jim Andrews. Jim, welcome.
Hello, my name is Jim Andrews. I've lived in Corte Madera since 1988. My background is in finance and accounting. I have an MBA from Northwestern, and I'm currently CFO of a registered investment company. I served 1 term on town council as a member, vice mayor, and mayor. Took office in December of 2015. 2016, we replaced the town manager. I negotiated the initial contract with him, and I then spent the next year working with him to get the town finances under control, and so that we had a good game plan for financial success with the town. And once we had a rough idea what the game plan was, in 2018 we passed the sales tax override, which extended the override but also increased it slightly, and that was set under the terms of the agreement. It was set aside so that it would be used to fund the town's capital budget. Okay. We also worked on the pension plans. We set up a 115 trust to help smooth out cash flows needed to pay the pension plans. As it currently stands now, our pension fund is fully funded. And then in 19 and 20, I worked with the town manager try and mitigate the brush on the hillsides. And we set up a neighborhood chipper program. And and the thought process on that was we would help the homeowners clear the brush on their properties, as opposed to the way some towns do it, which is just write summons and citations to clear brush. We wanted to help them. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Jim Andrews. Eli Beckman, would you give us your thoughts for the next couple of minutes?
Hi, everybody. I'm Eli Beckman. I was born and raised here in Corte Madera, and for the last 4 years, it's been my privilege and honor to serve on the Corte Madera Town Council, including as mayor from 2020 to 2021. We've been able to accomplish a lot over the last 4 years. We managed a successful response to the COVID-19 pandemic. We actually are the only city in Marin County, as far as I know, to get through the entire pandemic, balancing our budget the whole way without any cuts to services for residents or any layoffs of staff positions. We've notched some major wins on climate change over the last 4 years, including adopting a climate adaptation plan that is going to guide the town's response to protecting our homes and businesses from flooding and wildfire. And we created a climate action committee that's going to help guide the town in reducing our carbon emissions. So that's key. We've totally turned around the town's finances over the last 4 years. Corte Madera is now the only city I know of that is on track to fully fund its pension liabilities. For the first time in Corte Madera's history, we have budget reserves and they're fully funded. We've also implemented a number of other financial reforms, and all these together have served to raise Corte Madera's credit rating to AAA, which is the highest possible. And we've also made major strides on transparency. When I became mayor in 2020, I implemented our community chats, which are a monthly forum for residents to engage directly with the mayor and key department heads about whatever they want to talk about outside of the strictures of a council meeting. I'm the only council member in Marin County to post my voting record online for residents to see. And I also send out a regular newsletter to keep folks apprised of what we're working on here at Town Hall. So that's what we've accomplished over the last 4 years. I'm running because we've got a lot of momentum, but there's a lot to do ahead. Climate change was and remains my top priority. Obviously, we have to continue our efforts on reducing the town's carbon footprint. We need to continue our efforts on fire protection and fire preparedness. We also need to engage the community on a plan for flood control. Housing is going to be key in the coming years, dealing with the state mandate and also contending with the affordable housing crisis. And lastly, I want to work on issues of power and water, ensuring that we have a reliable supply of clean power and clean water going forward. Thank you.
Eli Beckman, thank you. Robert Lutani.
Hi, my name is Robert Lagrini. I'm almost a 2-year resident of Corte Madera. I'm a Bay Area native. Marin has always held a special place in my heart for the past 30 years. I've had my mindset on raising a family here. This is my first time running for public office. After much thought and support from my family, I decided to run for the opportunity to work close with the community and kind of help make this a destination place to raise a family, to retire, to do whatever your dreams may be for all the residents living in this town. I've never held public office, but I am fiscally responsible. I'm a current treasurer for a San Francisco nonprofit. I have an MBA, and I'm able to manage budgets and also apply. I'm good at applying for grants. So one of my kind of platforms is I want to try to get more money for the town by applying for state, federal, and other available grants that we can get that we can qualify for. Other than that, I'm curious by nature. I'm an engineer by trade, so I have a lot of experience with complex projects, with complex problems, with not that much information. So I'm very good with finding sources of truth and implementing, breaking down complex objectives into manageable tasks and delegating them. And yeah, one of the things I would like to help with is improving trash service for the town of Corte Madera. Thank you.
Robert, thank you. Robert Carney. Pat Ravasio, please.
Hi, it's Pat Ravasio here. I first want to thank the chamber and the overflowing gratitude to residents for the support I've been feeling out in the community. I have initiated and seen to conclude, sorry, microphone on. There we go. I've initiated and seen to completion some projects that Corte Madera seem to like: Cafe Verde and Town Park Plaza, the reinstated swim program at Redwood High School. Way back in the 90s, the Beautification Committee and Oktoberfest to raise funds for the hanging flower baskets. And recently, I recruited architects to design pro bono a new US 101 pedestrian overcrossing at Tamalpais to better connect the two sides of our town. But my greatest contribution to Corte Madera was to convince my husband, Bob, to run for town council in 2008. It was a different time then. Without public knowledge, the town had purchased Park Madera Center for nearly double what it had appraised for during escrow, which the town could not afford. So I begged Bob to run. And what happened over the next 14 years was really a whole renaissance of our town government. We are now in great shape fiscally and structurally with ongoing capital improvement plans. We are led by a talented staff, and today, in 2022, Corte Madera's government is not only transparent, but is actually community input driven. And we're civil and not too long-winded, thanks to the teamwork of people like Bob and Todd Cusimano. We're in such good shape that I think the biggest job for the three council candidates, the new members, will be to not mess things up. We are building a town hall. We are working on climate adaptation. We do need more affordable housing, but also development standards to defend us against irresponsible state housing laws. Defending and improving our community has been a 3-decade labor of love for my husband and I, and now it would be my pleasure and honor to serve on the town council. Thank you.
Pat Ravasio, thank you. Rosa Thomas, please.
Hello to everyone in the room and all those listening right now and those who will be listening to this recording. My name is Rosa Thomas, and I have had the pleasure of living in Corte Madera for over 28 years. My husband, Bruce, and I raised our 2 daughters here, where they attended Neil Cummins Hall in Redwood. I previously worked at Neil Cummins for 4 very rewarding years as a special education paraprofessional. Currently, I'm a training and development consultant for a health insurance company. I had the honor of serving on the Planning Commission from February 1997 to September 1998. As a former president of the Mariner Cove Neighborhood Association, I authored a grant proposal that won a $5,000 grant from the Marin Community Foundation that made it possible to rehabilitate and beautify the neighborhood entrances of our subdivision. Perhaps I'm most proudest of my community organizing efforts, which led to the revitalization of the once blighted Paradise Shopping Center. I was honored to be named Corte Madera Citizen of the Year 2001. I am currently a block captain and steering committee member of the Mariner Cove Neighborhood Response Team. Corte Madera is a prosperous and well-run town. I'm running for town council because I want to help keep that momentum going and perhaps bring a fresh perspective to the table. Over the next few years, Corte Maderans set the course for the future of housing, transportation, safety, and the environment, and an opportunity to grow better and grow smarter. I believe we can build a future our kids can afford to share with us here with affordable options. I believe that we can implement cost-effective mitigations and adaptations in response to climate change as problems become more complex, and we must strive to do the right things the right way, and always with vision, imagination, and compassion.
Rosa Thomas, thank you. We've now go into the question and answer phase of the session. And just to let you know, we've received many submitted questions from residents, and we've tried to formulate them in a way that don't conflict with each other, but we'll find out. The questions were selected that relate to specific issues in Corte Madera, in which the town council and its members have jurisdictions. So keep us in town council at Corte Madera focus. Each question will then be presented to each candidate in turn. Since Jim started, Eli will be the first to answer questions until all have had a chance to respond. Once again, it's 1.5-minute response per question. We'll rotate through the candidates, and as I said before, all these are, most of them at least, are general interest questions. The first 3 you've seen in advance, and I will read them. So Eli, you'll start. Eli Beckman, in your opinion, what is the most important issue facing Corte Madera, and how do you intend to address them?
Great, thank you, Dick. So I've got three priorities that I'm looking at moving forward. First, climate change was and remains my top priority. It's the only existential threat Corte Madera faces. Nearly half of our town is in the flood zone and the other half is in the fire zone. So it's a serious issue for us. I think the top priority, right, has to be continuing to reduce our town's carbon footprint, addressing the cause of climate change, doing our part. Obviously, Corte Madera alone can't move the needle, but we do have to do our part. And that's going to look like investing in more EV chargers, building electrification, and supporting the work of our Climate Action Committee and reducing the town's carbon footprint. Of course, we also have to address the effects of climate change that are already happening and that we already see around us. That's primarily flooding and wildfire. We've made really good strides over the last several years on wildfire protection, and we need to continue those efforts. We also need to engage the community on a robust and credible plan to protect the lower lying areas of Corte Madera from flood, especially with sea level rise. Housing is another top priority. The housing and affordability crises are real. They're right here. We need to meet our obligations under state law and meet our community's very real needs for housing. And I think the way we do that is to continue working with the community as we have been, consulting with the community on where housing should be placed. And I think the strategy that we've come together on is along the 101 corridor to reduce traffic in town. And of course, we have to hold the state accountable for unrealistic mandates. And finally, again, working on issues of power and water, we need to support Marin Clean Energy to create more local generation and storage of renewable energy. And we also need to support recycled water projects and conservation to ensure our water supply is secure. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Dick. The most important issues facing the most important issues facing Corte Madera. Yes, maintaining the safety of our neighborhoods, and this is kind of a blanket for keeping fire prevention programs and flooding mitigation well funded. Also, bike and pedestrian safety is a big concern. Corte Madera was a little bit late in applying the Complete Streets in 2016. We missed out on a Safe Streets for All grant that was due on September 15th. So this is where I think we can the town council can apply more emphasis on improving safety for our bikes and pedestrians. And most important, lack of housing. So focusing on the housing element draft review. Yes, the making sure that we meet the requirements for the number of units, especially 213 very low and moderate income households. And also having some climate impact, like sea level. I'm not very aware of this, educated enough, but we do have a support. I want to support the climate action adaptation coordinator to the fullest extent. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Pat. Oh, I should add, if anybody ever wants me to repeat a question, as you go through this, time passes, don't hesitate to say, could you repeat the question?
Okay, start.
Please.
Thank you, Dick. As always, I think the big issues will revolve around how well we manage the changes coming our way. For success, we will have to maintain the high caliber staff and the fiscal policies that have gotten us into such good shape where we are now braced for a recession with 20% in reserves. New housing proposals enabled by state law are coming. The Macy's site has been identified as the prime location for new housing. But how do we get what the community wants from this? Could we convince a private developer to allow community access to the beautiful swimming pool they are probably wanting to build anyway? I think we can do this. As for climate change and flood issues on the Bay side, I would love to see an exploration into alternatives to a seawall. For wildfires, a greater commitment to maintenance of the trails and the steps that comprise our evacuation routes and our recreation trails. Importantly, residents spoke clearly in the recent master plan survey about their desire for a richer cultural life. More gathering places, community gardens, things like that are issues I hope we'll have time to discuss. Lastly, how well we listen to our residents will always be a factor in our success. It's a bigger job to do it that way and it takes longer, but listening closely is the best way we can be sure to get things right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pat. Rosa.
First and foremost.
No.
First and foremost, Corte Madera must remain financially strong and resilient. We must support local business in the ways that matter to them and ensure that doing business in Corte Madera is as streamlined as possible. Next, flood and fire prevention and preparedness. We must continue to educate residents on what they can do to harden their homes against fire and flood threats. I support incentivizing homeowners who want to elevate their homes in low-lying areas to have the fees waived for the height variance and to not actually need a height variance at all. I also wish we could provide rebates to homeowners who want to upgrade to less flammable building materials. Next, we must increase workforce housing. A recent Marin County grand jury report found that only about 45% of Marin County government employees live in the county. Approximately 68,000 workers commute into Marin from another county daily. And pre-pandemic, an estimated 16,000 of them traveled more than 100 miles a day. I support making every good faith effort to support the development of more affordable housing in Corte Madera. And that brings you to traffic, which I will go very quickly. I vigorously support pursuing sources of additional funds to enable the building of the 101 overcrossing version plan 4B.
Thank you very much, James.
Yes, I guess the key issues would basically center around health and safety and town finances. In terms of health and safety, it's basically environmental risk. Right now, we do not have a firm plan on how to address sea level rise on the east side of town. We did a preliminary study over the last 4 or 5 years, and the residents didn't like the results. So we're going to have to go back and readdress that issue. In terms of fire in the hillsides, we've been able to identify specific projects that could help with evacuation routes up in the hills. Also, in the last year and a half that I was on council, we had a neighborhood chipper program where on average each month we hauled about 1,000 cubic yards of chip material off the hillsides. That got with COVID, that sort of went in abeyance. I think we need to re-resurrect it because if we want to bring wildfires handling the perimeter of the towns, but within the town, we've got to be much more aggressive about clearing the brush if we want to be able to handle wildfires. So.
James, thank you. We're going to go to the second question. Once again, you've had a chance to read this. Robert, you'll be the first to have a chance to comment for 1.5 minutes. If you are on the town council, what would you like to see happen at Park Madera Center in the short and long term?
Thank you. Short term, from the people I spoke with in the community, we want to improve traffic flow in and out of Park Madera and add better accessibility to the park. Right now, there's no accessibility to the park from the Park Madera Center. Long term, kind of based on the August 27th, 2021 Parks and Rec assessment, 60% believe it's very important that that site becomes available to repurpose at least some of it, 20% maybe, to the Parks and Recreation for facilities and programs. So this is coming from the public. Also, regarding funding, the residents, 30% of the residents feel like it should be a tax deductible donation or a special tax assessment. And lastly, as far as how to repurpose that whole area, convert, it would be, it was expressed to convert that location into mixed commercial and residential, preferential housing to teachers and town workers. Thank you.
Pat. Park Madera Center is the question.
Because this property is in fact part of the park, maybe we should think of it that way as part of our park. So that means short term, taking down the chain link fences and restoring the historic pathway from the back of the center out into the park so that it's open and accessible to the community like it always was before the town bought it. As to what it should be long-term, I think we should start with a series of community workshops to see if the residents can reach a consensus. The current direction seems to be to transition business spaces into more community activity spaces. This seems to be what residents want, but are there businesses that would they want to keep? Are there types of businesses that should be there that aren't? And what kinds of spaces do residents want? More outdoor or indoor spaces, or should we build something? So there's lots of questions, and I think some community conversations would be very helpful. Then, of course, it would be up to the town council to either support or reject this consensus vision. And once there's some agreement, our town manager and staff can come up with an action plan, as they always do, for how we can meet the desired objectives and transition. This will take some time, but most worthwhile things in a small town do. Thank you.
Rosa.
For both the long and short term, I feel we will always need the commercial component of that location for revenue purposes. So development of a flexible mixed-use space would probably be best. As the town's needs and the community's desires change, so can the space. We don't know when the next pickleball is going to come along, and we have to be ready for it. There has been some conversation about returning some of the area to green space. I think that having a plaza that incorporates some green spaces in some areas is very valuable. So it's a space I feel that we really have to look at the future and how people will really use it, and not actually have things that they're nice to have, but no one uses. And there, I believe, is where the public input will be valuable.
Thank you. James.
Okay, I guess short term, I think we should stick with the existing financial plan, which is to try and run the center so that it's on a cash flow positive basis. Okay, right now the property has a $7.4 million mortgage on it, which if we try and convert it to anything else means we've got to take that money out of our general plan and not spend it on things like flood control or wildfire mitigation, okay? That mortgage should be fully paid off, and if we continue to, when I say cash flow positive, I mean it's covering the interest and it's covering the principal, so by 2037, we should own the property free and clear, okay? At that time, I'm very open to suggestions as to what to do with the property. We could take down all the buildings, just have more green grass. I've heard talk of somebody wants a pool. We could keep it as a business sort of incubator site. One issue with the buildings is they're ancient, and we're going to have to probably in not too distant future decide whether it really makes sense to put a lot of renovation money into those old buildings, or whether we need to just take them down and go forward from there. So in terms of long-term, your guess is as good as mine.
Thank you. Eli.
Thank you. That's a great question. I think in the short term, obviously, what we need to do is really engage the community in an open and robust public process, and really consult with residents on what their need and their vision is for the space. I think that's where we're going to get the best kind of direction in terms of what we want to see there that fits best with our community. Long term, I think it's fairly clear that while we need to certainly work with residents to develop the finer details, it seems pretty clear that what would be most beneficial for the community would be some sort of robust mixed use development. I'm talking commercial, community serving commercial spaces with housing, hopefully housing for folks who are typically underserved or don't have access to housing in Corte Madera. That's our seniors, our workforce, our teachers, our firefighters, the people who really make our community tick, but are often priced out of Corte Madera. I think that's a perfect spot to get housing for those folks in there. And then I think the final piece of the puzzle, and maybe the most exciting piece, is talking about what kind of public facilities could we get in there. So I think residents have been clear. A lot of residents would like like a pool, this could be an opportunity to look at that. I think some form of additional community gathering space would be fantastic, whether it's indoor or outdoor. So I think that's kind of the cherry on top. And I think when you take these three pieces together, it's going to become something that's really vital and beneficial for the community.
Pat, you'll start with the next question as going first, and it's, do you think combining our police and fire departments with those of other towns has been beneficial to Corte Madera? And are there other services you would suggest combining with neighboring towns?
Thank you. I think consolidation has been a bit of a mixed blessing. While there have been economic benefits, I think there have been some unforeseen consequences. For the most part, consolidation of the fire departments makes great sense. I do support ongoing discussions about the merger with the Ross Valley into Larkspur Corte Madera fire departments. That will help us achieve the all-important 3 firefighter per truck standard, which is the new standard of care. But the bar for consolidation should be high. Savings must result with no loss in quality of service. As far as Central Marin Police, I first want to say how much I admire the training that's been done to help officers diffuse rather than elevate situations, and consolidation has enhanced this kind of professionalism, but I do have a concern. Police officers don't seem quite as small town and friendly as they once did in Corte Madera. We used to know them. We'd see them around town, out of their cars at events, something that in small town charm kind of got lost a little bit in consolidation. As far as the recent conversations about possibly merging Corte Madera and Larkspur Public Works, I'm leery of this. Our Corte Madera Public Works Department is second to none. We have master plans for both roads and sewers and funds for one-time projects as well. A merger with Larkspur would be a huge added responsibility, and I cannot imagine that Corte Madera's quality of service would not be affected if we did that merger. So some mergers are a great idea, but that doesn't mean they all are. Thank you.
Rosa.
The formation of the police and fire JPAs have saved money for both Corte Madera and Larkspur. And there are many professional or potential benefits to combining Central Marin Fire Authority and the Ross Valley Fire Authority, mainly by eliminating the need for the county paramedic contract and bringing all the paramedic services in-house, since now the JPA has enough firefighters / paramedics. With JPAs, as with all kinds of mergers and consolidations, it can always be difficult in the beginning. It can be, it can have a lot of challenges, but I do think that the good people of Corte Madera and Larkspur are cooperative people. I think they can work through these things. And because small towns are very expensive to run per capita, I think it's smart to look for opportunities to combine services and reduce cost.
Thank you. James.
Yes, I think the merger of the police department first when it became Twin Cities, and then when it became Central Marin, was very cost effective, and I don't think there was any degradation of services. It also made it easier to hire employees because there were more promotion slots since it was a bigger department. I think the same holds true for the fire departments in terms of other areas where they might need to, where we might combine services. Maybe in parks and rec, sort of service areas, that might make sense where Larkspur and us would work together more there. In terms of project-oriented work, whether it's things like public works and so on, I'm not certain that the operations of the two cities will easily merge together in a collaborative way. When you're doing project planning and you've got multi-jurisdictions, very often the pace of solution is driven by the speed of the slowest participant. And Corte Madera has traditionally had an attitude of, let's just get her done, okay? And if you look at fact that our town is not routinely flooding. Ross Valley has spent millions of dollars, couple of decades, and they still haven't figured anything out. I'm hesitant to give up local control in certain areas.
Thank you. Eli.
Thank you. I think with respect to what we've done here in Central Marin with police and fire, I think it's obvious that there have been clear benefits for the community. We're seeing better response times and a much lower cost to taxpayers. So it's pretty hard to argue with that. So, informed by that, I definitely support consolidation wherever it makes sense. And that would be primarily where it reduces administrative burdens or duplication of work and lowers the cost to taxpayers without negatively impacting the services that we're providing. I think some potential candidates for these might be like admin departments or finance departments. I think there are other areas where it's probably not appropriate to look at consolidation. I think those are primarily going to be departments or services that are more kind of critical to our individual community's identity. And so I'm thinking, for example, of like a planning department. It's entirely possible that the people of Corte Madera and the people of Larkspur may have different ideas of how they want their communities to look and feel, and that's totally okay. We need to respect that. So I think there are certain areas where it makes sense to pursue consolidation. Obviously, having done due diligence and studied the issue thoroughly, and making sure that we are going to see positive outcomes. I think there are other areas where it's probably not worth, spending too much time or money looking into it seriously.
Thank you. Robert.
Thank you, Dick. Yes, from somewhat new to the town, from what I've heard from residents, yes, there's the merger of combining the police and fire departments has overwhelmingly improved service, response times, and less administrative overhead for these services. Regarding other services that could be combined, I've heard from a lot of people that some of the existing franchise agreements, for example, or sanitary services and street cleaning, that's a good candidate to be combined with our neighbor. We've seen that the services provided in Larkspur, the sanitary services are superior, and I want to help bring that to improve services here for our residents here in Corte Madera. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Robert. We're going to go to questions now. And Rosa, by the way, you'll be the first person to answer the next series of questions, which have come from residents. And we try to be kind of specific on these. So they're too minor or too specific. Feel free to expand a bit. What steps, Rosa, could be taken to address the very serious issue of sea level rise, particularly in the areas of Corte Madera where controversy has already risen, like the water side of Golden Hind Passage in East Corte Madera, where homeowners have already strongly rejected some suggested ideas. Rosa.
I think it is a very complicated question because I think there's sort of an idea that if you do something, then you are admitting there's a problem. And so I've sort of looked into this a bit, and by actually mitigating the problem, I think it actually makes your property more valuable rather than thinking that, well, if I raise my house, if I build a berm, if I do something, then it's going to just admit to the world that, my house has a problem. So I think that raising the houses seems to be, if you're not going to, put up a wall or a berm, then your house, the water has to go somewhere. So I think that the only other alternative, and I support helping people with this, the town making that an easier thing to do, is to raise your home.
James.
Yes. The difficulty with we've run into is over the years, there's been several projects suggested for keeping the east side of town dry. And usually there's one or two very vocal homeowners who object to it. 30 years ago, is somebody who was afraid he couldn't get his boat out to the bay. More recently, it was, I'm not certain, there was one of the many options was building a seawall. The bottom line is sooner or later, we're going to have to do something. And one option is just raise the streets like on San Clemente and Paradise and raise that up, and that will keep most of the town dry. Okay. But it abandons 3 or 4 important neighborhoods. But the thing the residents of those neighborhoods have to realize is that we can run pumps all day. But if it's a king tide and water's flowing besides the house, on either side of the house, okay, you're going to burn out the pumps. And sooner or later, it's not going to make sense to replace all those pumps. Also, sooner or later, FEMA's going to come in and say that there's been too much flooding in the area and they aren't going to write insurance, or they're going to buy you out. So it means we're going to have to figure out a solution that will work for the residents there, or else make hard decisions.
Thank you, Eli.
Thanks. That's a great question and a really tough issue. I think what we have to do immediately is really come back around and re-engage the community like we tried, I believe it was in 2020. And what we found at that time was we did not have a very representative group of the community involved in those discussions. Those discussions were in fact dominated by a few very vocal members of the community who did not, it turned out, in hindsight, represent the majority of the folks that live in the flood zone. So I think we need to come back around and be much more intentional in how we're engaging residents and make sure that we've got, a real large group of the affected residents, a representative group of the affected residents at the table. Once we've got that together, I think we're in a much more solid position to start moving forward together as a community, evaluating potential solutions. I think raising homes is a short-term solution. I agree that the town should make it easier for folks to raise their homes in the short term, but that's not going to help us when we're starting to see sea level rise on the order of 2, 3, 4 feet. And at some point, you get to the point where if you want to continue having hundreds of homes in East Corte Madera and in Madera Gardens and other areas in the floodplain, as I'm sure we all do, you're going to need to start talking about some sort of barrier to keep the water out. I think the term seawall is very scary. I think whether it's constructing new marshlands, I think there are other ways of approaching this idea that are going to be more palatable and more pleasant for the community and will actually add value. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Nick. This is a very tricky situation that the east side of the town is in. From the residents I spoke with, most are in favor with the seawall. I do agree that will require a lot of planning. As far as just saying seawall, it could also be explored kind of mixed use. Like people don't want to lose their access to the water, and how can the town offer get the best of both, having a seawall to protect the houses and also allowing those residents to park their craft and continue enjoying living by the water with their personal crafts. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
First of all, we had a friend visit who was actually like a federal policy wonk, and he said, "I can't believe your small town is taking on this challenge. Towns aren't really often doing that for their community." So bravo, Corte Madera, for stepping up and being really incredibly responsible here. Unfortunately for the homeowners, I think our first job needs to be to protect the shopping malls, because that's where a good source of our revenue comes from. So the village and town center and those things, they're not going to complain if we put up a seawall to protect them. And as far as the homeowners go, I did follow some of the climate change discussions. And what I'd like to say is that this is a worldwide issue. There are solutions all over the globe being explored for climate change. And I think we need to go wide and really look around and see what's happening in other low-lying areas and what their solutions are. There's burning, there are attractive seawalls that you can't even see because the land goes out to them. Floating breakwaters are being used in Thailand, raised housing, and even floating homes, which seems to work fine for places like Sausalito and Green Bay. So I think if we open it up and have lots of big thinking here, we'll set upon the right solution. Just like Corte Madera always seems to, if we just take the time and do it right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question, and James, you'll have the honor of starting off, the first person to answer the question, which relates to the Alto Tunnel. Reopening the Alto Tunnel closes a gap on a flat, safe, direct, multi-use path, which runs from Sausalito all the way to Mendocino County. If no funds are required from the Corte Madera General Fund and reopening the tunnel is paid for by Federal Transportation Infrastructure Act, will you support reopening the tunnel? Does that question understand? No local money. And if there's no local money, are you for or against reopening the tunnel? James?
I don't believe the county has a legal easement to use that tunnel any longer. It was originally a railroad easement. The railroad was abandoned. Then they plugged the tunnel with thousands of tons of gravel. Okay. And given the benefits, there are at least two routes from Mill Valley to Corte Madera. We could improve the one over by Casa Buena. I really don't think it's worth spending the money to dig out that tunnel. Also, when we're digging it out, it's going to disrupt Tamalpais, the main street in town, for a year and a half. And then we're going to have to resurface it because when you run that many heavy trucks on a roadway, you're going to end up having to rebuild it. So no, I'm not in favor of the Alto Tunnel.
James, thank you. Eli?
Well, if the question is, could we have a 40, 50, $60 million bike and pedestrian infrastructure project delivered for our residents for free? I would say yes. I will admit I'm a little skeptical about the premise of that, but if, it's answering the question, yes, that sounds fantastic. I think if there is an ask of funding for Corte Madera, as I suspect there likely will be, whether it's an ask of direct funding for the project, or as Jim was kind of getting at, an ask on secondary funding for things like, repaving roadways torn up by construction equipment or things like that, then it becomes a much more tricky, thorny question, right? Of looking at what are the ridership numbers that we're expecting for this tunnel. I am all for bike and pedestrian infrastructure as a rule, but there's got to be a value for the money there. There's got to be a bang for the buck, and I just need to see the numbers on any specific project before I can, commit one way or the other. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah, so if the tunnel is paid completely by federal money and no local money, I would still lean towards no. The just the cost of, not the cost, but the ongoing cost of maintaining such an infrastructure, also having escape routes, throughout the tunnel for sort of the safety considerations and also the impacts to the other communities. We have to have these escape routes. I don't know how many feet, but it's a much bigger. It could be a much bigger project than the money that would be allocated for, and also considering ridership and safety. It's this tunnel. Who's going to? What are the safety considerations for the tunnel? Do we need to install security cameras? Do we need to close it every day at a certain time? So I'm very skeptical of opening the tunnel, even if we had the money. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat?
as my mother always said to me, never look a gift horse in the mouth. So if we were to get it free and no matter what it costs, they would pay for it free, then yes, I would definitely support it. It would be an amazing asset to be able to ride my bike into Mill Valley or to have traffic through Corte Madera in a way that we're not the ones that block this wonderful span. But cost is the biggest factor. And I think the costs are now thinking, I've heard more around $100 million. So if you look at that and you realize that would be 4 bicycle and pedestrian overpasses on Tamalpais, because that's going to cost 25 million. So it starts to sound like just this astronomical problem that really isn't going to get solved. So I know I'm excited to see the Casa Buena project happening with some bike paths along there. When I ride my bike to Mill Valley, that is for me the easiest way. I go up the long and winding Meadow Sweet and then down over Horse Hill. And it's not perfect, but I think it's as good as we've got for right now. So I would like to see some interim money going into making that pathway safer for kids and for all riders. Because if I can handle that hill, basically, I think pretty much anybody can. So yeah, but if it was free, I would take it.
Rosa.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Once again, you kind of look at, when I first heard about this, I thought, oh, it was a great thing. And I'm not a cyclist. I've not been on a bicycle since I was 8 years old. And I just thought, oh, great. People like to ride their bikes. This would be a great thing. But when I started to hear about the cost, and then there's always the question of how many people are really going to use it? And could that money go, like Pat was saying, to, projects that would actually benefit more people? And really, that's what you want. And not just the luxury riders, not just the exclusive high-speed bikes, but everyday people. So I would have to see a lot more information before I would support that idea.
Next question, and it's Eli, by the way, we'll start off on this. We've asked a very specific question with the Alta Tunnel, now a slightly different fact. How do you assure residents that you're willing to work with and listen to others with a different point of view?
That is a great question, because I think that is like one of the most important job requirements for somebody who wants to be on a town council. I would say, I think my track record shows that I'm very willing to listen to and engage with folks who have different points of views on any given issue than me. And I think what's most important is that I don't come to any issue that comes before the council. I don't approach these issues with a preset opinion, or from an ideological standpoint where my mind is already made up. I come to the table with an open mind. I listen to what folks have to say, my fellow council members and the public, and of course our staff, and I kind of synthesize and aggregate all the information and all the opinions that we're able to gather. And I think it's through that collaborative process that we're ultimately able, to find a way forward on any given issue, as Corte Madera has built up a history of doing such a good job on in recent years. That would be, I would say, look at the track record of collaboration, of open-mindedness, and of really approaching issues in a way that is pragmatic and not, ideological or rigid.
Thank you, Eli. Robert.
Yeah, personally, I support all points of view. I'm not coming to the council with my own point of view. I'm here to address the needs of the community. And background about myself. I mean, I come from a multicultural background. I don't have any hangups with color, race, origin, or political preference. So I look at the facts, and I want to find the source of truth. So I'm open to what anything comes my way. That's all I have to say on this matter.
Thank you, Pat.
So I would have to change sort of what my role has been if I was elected to the council. I've always been sort of the outside, come in and rattle the gates and say, hey, how come we're not doing this? Or can we do this? And so that has required me to sometimes come on a little strong. And I think that as the IJ called me opinionated and outspoken, and I had to look up and realize those weren't really insults. But definitely as a council member, my job would change. I would be primarily supportive of staff. I think it's really important for our council to know that we are of limited power in our roles. We have the right to hire and fire our town manager. But other than that, we're supposed to pretty much step back and let the town manager do his job and not always be trying to turn the staff's attention when there are so many important, basic nuts and bolts things that need to be accomplished. So, but again, I won't be able to be the instigator that I have been in the past. I'll have to sit back and be thoughtful and listen and be a little bit more like Bob Ravazio sometimes. So I do get that I have had some strong opinions and I don't apologize for any of those. But I definitely realized that my role would change if I was elected to council.
Rosa.
This is a really interesting question because it's the kind of thing that we, and all of us in all walks of life and whatever our roles are, we're making decisions, but we have a lot of variables to weigh. And oftentimes when people say, I'm not heard, what they're really saying is, you didn't give me what I want. But what we have to do as pastors, we are limited there. We take an oath when you come to office to uphold the laws of the state of California and the codes of your town. And because of that, sometimes what's best for the town isn't necessarily pleasing to a particular person, and that person then might feel that they were not heard. However, what's important is that we do the best we can for the most people we can within the law and stick to that. And as long as we do that, we are serving the public completely, not even the public that doesn't agree with us. We are serving them because that is our charge.
Thank you. James.
I'm sorry.
Your turn.
Oh, well,
James,
okay,
your turn.
Okay.
Shall I, the question is, how do we know? How do you reassure voters that you will listen as a councilman to varying points of view, different points of view?
Okay, well, basically I spent over 4 years doing that when I was on council. I tried to be responsive to people when I was on council. I made it a point whenever there was what I thought was a possibly controversial issue where the town was holding an information meeting, to actually go there and sit and watch what people were saying. So not only could I read the minutes of the meeting, but I could also sort of hear the tenor of their voices and basically how they were reacting. I would probably continue to do that. Well, I know I would continue to do that if I was reelected or was elected to council. So that's pretty much it.
Okay. Robert, you'll go first this time. The town of Corte Madera has committed to some major and expensive projects over the years, and we've been told, the citizenry has been told, the town is in good financial health. What expertise would you bring to the town to make good financial decisions?
Thank you. As far as expertise, like I mentioned in my intro, I'm currently a nonprofit treasurer. I have an MBA. I have a track record throughout my professional experience. I'm an engineering manager. I've managed multi-million-dollar projects. I have an eye to control costs and making sure that the resources, the right resources are involved in projects at the right time. And yeah, I'm very attentive to details coming from my background, and I comb through all the facts and yeah, I am able to go deep into understanding highly complex budgets and look at different points of view and approach these problems with the fiscal eye and listen to points of view and make executive decisions based on what's best for the town. Thank you.
Ravasio.
Thanks very much. I think that I'm pretty good at figuring out how to get things done for less, like recruiting world-class architects to look at this design for the overcrossing for free because he happened to have a kid who rode his bike to school and he wanted a better bridge himself. So I think we have an amazing resource in our community of volunteers with great professional skills. And I think we can, like the old fashioned kind of barn raising, we can get some of our work done with more sort of volunteer support. I think it all comes down to judgment, having good judgment. It's really important that you care, but the competence and the time spent sort of seeing how things go and what works and what doesn't. I think I have I've earned some good judgment on, what is worth doing and what isn't. Examples, I talk about, building community and creating more community culture and activities instead of building a whole new rec center, which we tried to do once. Things like Town Park Plaza and the dog park and the community gardens we're talking about, those are all like community centers that they don't need walls. They're just outdoor space. So I think there are ways to economize some of what some people would call luxury things and find ways to do them for less. So I would contribute in that way.
You, Rosa Thomas.
Mind repeating the question? So make sure I'm hitting
Of
all
course. Of course. The town has committed to some major and expensive projects over the years, but we're told that the town is now in good financial shape. Going forward, what expertise or what talent would you bring to the town to make good financial decisions?
We are and have been, I think, for many, many years, blessed with a really good staff. And they do a lot of good work of explaining, and their reports are thorough. And I think that works very well for citizens who want to serve, who, like myself, I have a business degree, but it's not an MBA. But I have a sense of business. But in fact, my husband owned Recycled Records in San Francisco for 40 years. So it was and the business goes on. We're just not bricks and mortar anymore. But so I do know the nuts and bolts of keeping a business going and understanding when you're making money, when you're losing money, when you're making a profit, when you're not. So I bring that, and also just the ability to ask questions and to listen.
Thank you. James.
Well, I guess the key thing is, I have a finance and accounting degree. I worked with the Old Town manager and helping sort of set up our financial plan that they're currently implementing. I guess the chief strength I have is I'm willing to dive into the details, so I fully understand what the issues are, and then, talk with the town manager and the town staff open and candidly. about what I saw, the positives and negatives of what they're planning on doing. And if I'm on town council again, I will continue to be open and honest with town staff and make it a point to do my homework, which, you know, over the years, I've seen some town councils where folks don't do the homework. So that's it.
Thank you. Eli.
Thank you. When I first ran for town council in 2018, I was very straight up with folks and said, hey, I do not have a background in finance. My background is in architecture. I've never been a finance guy. It's a very different picture now. So I spent the last 4 years at the helm of the town of Corte Madera, Sanitary District 2, the Central Marin Sanitation Agency, a number of other public agencies, and I am also a local small business owner. And I think the proof is in the pudding at this point. So we've built here in Corte Madera a resilient revenue base over the last several years, while dramatically controlling recurring costs for the town. Like I said, we have implemented a whole host of financial reforms over the last 4+ years, and the result is that Corte Madera's creditworthiness has been recognized by credit rating agencies, and we now have the highest credit rating possible. That's a very different picture from 2008, when Corte Madera almost went bankrupt at the height of the financial crisis and was the subject of Marin civil grand jury reports. Corte Madera was at that time almost the picture of how not to run a town. And I think the what I call the fiscal renaissance that we've seen in Corte Madera, particularly over the last 4 to 6 years, I think tells the story of a town council that really knows what it's doing and is really focused on building a financial and resilient, fiscal situation for the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Eli. Next question is, and Pat, we're going to start with you. This is a question which applies directly to Corte Madera. On the other hand, just about every candidate for council office or county supervisor in the state of California gets the same question. How would you push back or approach pushing back on county and particularly unfunded state mandates? Pat Ravasio.
So I'm guessing this was motivated by all the housing talk and the laws coming down from Sacramento.
That's certainly the tip of the iceberg.
And I do think that I've heard some really good arguments why it's not constitutional for the state to, for example, tell Corte Madera how it must use its land. Land use is something that is not detailed in the Constitution, and the Constitution clearly says if it's not in here, it means that it is reverted to the most local municipality. So that means by constitutional law, Corte Madera should have control over how we use our lands. But we know that state law is what it is, and we have to play along. And there was a time when we actually made a very bold statement by pulling out of ABAG back when Bob first got on the council, and we were given these ludicrous numbers that we later found out had absolutely no basis in anything other than somebody wanted to give us a high number. So I would like to see Corte Madera, while we abide by state law and do what we are, jump through the hoops for the state government. I think we should also be looking at how we can support some of these initiatives by Marin organizations and others to challenge these laws and these unfunded mandates for housing and other things.
Rosa.
This is, I think, not as simple a question as it might want to appear. Local governments and communities in the past have done things that they had jurisdiction over that were not necessarily good for society as a whole. We can think of many of them. There were subdivisions that had covenants that certain people couldn't live there. There was redlining. There were many things done that now the government does step in and say, we've got to make this right because this is bad for society as a whole. And I think that as far as housing is concerned, we have to have some kind of personal group responsibility for the fact that a lot of our kids are saying, we can't afford to live here. We have tax policy that makes it very advantageous for anyone who already has a home, but makes it impossible for people to get one. And so there has to be a balance between, and when there isn't that balance, that's when the government steps in. But then if we take it upon ourselves to do the right thing and, create better balance, then government won't have to step in and do it for us.
Rosa, thank you, James.
Well, we're what's called a general law city. And so we're going to have to obey those general laws. It might make sense to become a charter city if that gives us more authority for local affairs. But the other alternative is, on occasion, if there's a particular issue that's important to us and our community, join other cities in suing the state to push back against some of their mandates. But the bottom line is, the town of Corte Madera only exists because the state gives us the authority. We don't have an intrinsic authority ourselves. We have delegated authority from the states, so.
Thank you, James. Eli.
Yeah, I think this is a really important question that gets to kind of the essence of this very particular time that we're in local government right now, where we're seeing, I think, especially the state of California turn increasingly to these kind of sweeping mandates to achieve certain policy objectives. I think what's most important, for council members like myself is to establish a constructive and close working relationship with your legislators. So I've spent the last 4 years, working on that, investing my time in building that working relationship with our county, state, and federal legislators. So I'm talking with Congressman Huffman about recycled water projects. I'm talking with Senator McGuire about housing requirements. And I think what that gives us the ability to do, and the asset that I'm bringing to the town there is we have a seat at the table, right? And we're able to now engage these policymakers in a way that's constructive, but puts us at the table and allows us in these conversations to point out what are oftentimes very real flaws in some of these policies that we're seeing handed down, or these sweeping mandates. To take housing for an example, I'm personally pro-housing. I'm not anti-growth. I think growth is a natural thing somewhere where you've got a hot economy like the Bay Area. But if we're looking at where we're putting housing, right, the RHNA system, the Regional Housing Needs Allocation System, spits out a mandate for every community, regardless of whether you're in the flood zone or the fire zone. And I will tell you that cramming new housing into disaster zones does not make sense. It's not smart, and it's not equitable. So I think those are the types of ways in which we need to engage policymakers to improve policy.
Robert, state mandates is the question.
State mandates, and we're focusing on the approach on pushing back to unfunded state mandates. First off, what is a thorough review on the impact of the mandates to the town specifically? What our neighbors, what our other towns and cities in Marin County are addressing the problem. So really leveraging a network, from other members of the town council to all the way up to the food chain, to see how we can make these mandates work for the town, or if needed, push back. So looking for doing the homework and involving the wider network to approach these problems. Thank you.
Or thank you. We're going to ask you a question, so I could combine two questions because they could probably be answered in a minute and a half, and time is getting on. These are both very local questions rather than statewide questions. First half, do you think that the town should install artificial turf fields in town parks instead of natural grass fields? That's part A. Part B, what can the town do to protect pedestrians on past trails from fast-moving e-bikes? Very Corte Madera oriented. Turf, e-bikes, safety, fields, paths. Let's start with Rosa.
So Boston, the mayor of Boston, just this week, I believe, banned the installation of any more artificial turf fields in the city of Boston. And one of the issues are the toxic PFAS, which are, the reasons they stated that are forever chemicals that cause all kinds of neurological issues. And what they mean by the forever chemicals is that it's like if you have a plastic bucket in your garage, and when you first get it, it's pliable, but over time, you have it there for 10 or 15 years, it crumbles. That's because the product that's in it that keeps it pliable off gases into the air. So I think that it's really important to research this very thoroughly. Boston's not the only city. There are about 7 cities now that have banned the artificial turf. And so I'd have to get a lot more information to know about that. And
2
then the
seconds
other
on
one-
e-bikes. What can you do to make
E-bikes?
pedestrians safer from e-bikes?
Well, I think that maybe, and I don't know what the bike laws are, but it sounds like they're not abiding by the existing law. And so I think enforcement is necessary.
James,
Let me see. Artificial turf. My gut reaction is I don't like it, but I also realize that at least in Town Park, that existing soccer field is sort of a muddy mess. And there has been suggestion from the local school and then also some of the parents to install artificial turf. I'm hesitant for the reasons Rosa mentioned about the chemicals in artificial turf to put that in. But I also think we need to figure out how to get decent drainage in Town Park on that particular field if we're going to have a lot of kids playing soccer on it. E-bikes, I'm not certain what exactly we can do other than raise the issue with Central Marin Police and decide if we want to have their motorcycle policemen out there with a radar gun issuing tickets for folks speeding on their e-bikes, which is the concept of it I don't like, but it's scary to walk on some of our paths right now.
James, thank you. Eli,
Thank you. Important questions. Artificial turf is an environmental catastrophe. It's not safe for our kids. It's not safe for our pets. It's not safe for wildlife. There's also a heat issue. So if we're talking about what to do about the existing fields that are not playable because they're too muddy when it's been raining heavily, that's absolutely a real problem that we need to work on. And what, that may look like drainage, that may look like different types of natural turf. I'm open to exploring all options there. I'll tell you what it doesn't look like is a field of plastic that gets too hot to play on in the summer. And we see heat is becoming an increasing issue. So I think artificial turf would absolutely create more problems than it would solve. With regards to e-bikes, that's also super important and one that I hear is on a lot of residents' minds. I think one thing we need to do is have clearly posted and enforced speed limits for e-bikes. That just seems like a common sense, step one. And then 2, I think we need to take a closer look at whether there are certain classes of e-bike that maybe are not appropriate to have sharing, have on shared paths with pedestrians. So I think, we should work with pedestrian groups and of course have bike groups at the table as well and kind of work together to troubleshoot that issue and figure out what the best balance is that's going to allow folks to bike around, but most importantly is going to keep everyone safe because safety always comes first. Thank you.
great. Well, thank you. And thank Robert, please.
Thank you. Regarding artificial turf, that's my first gut response would be no. Just for the costs and the potential damage, health risks associated with artificial turf, and reversing from artificial turf back to grass. It seems that it would be almost not a cost or endeavor that this town should be taken on at this point, at this time. Regarding e-bikes, it's tricky. Perhaps a town policy where maybe just class 1 e-bikes can be allowed. These are e-bikes that are pedal driven. They don't have accelerators. That's probably the most common nuisance is people not actually biking, but using the accelerator and zooming through traffic. So having having class 1 e-bikes allowed and others not could be something worth looking into. Thank you.
Robert Lucarni, thank you. Pat Ravasio.
So I agree with the mayor of Boston that we don't need any more AstroTurf to fight our climate problems by creating more plastic and getting rid of more natural ecosystem seems crazy. But what I'd like to see Corte Madera do is really step up. Tiburon did it. They created a nice raised even field of grass. And there are drought resistant grasses. Dana Swisher, who's being celebrated tonight, and I talked, and she said, oh yeah, there are drought resistant grasses that can work on fields like this, and we can, it might cost a little more to start out, but we'll end up with something that the kids are dying to play on because it's going to feel like a really great, even nice turf field. As far as e-bikes go, I'm pretty sure I got something from Central Marin Police saying a reminder that the speed limit is 15 miles an hour. And if you get fined, it is a $250 fine. So I think if we got some of our police officers, maybe on e-bikes themselves or on motorcycles or some way where they can intercept these mostly kids, really young kids, which is the age limit thing is my big question. But if we just issued a few tickets in town for $250 each, I think the parents would start clamping down on the kids. There's a gal in Mill Valley who posted on Nextdoor that there's a new application where you can monitor your kids going to and fro and also the speed at which they are going. So I think, like a lot of things, we can use existing laws to make that a better situation.
Well, you've each made a terrific presentation tonight, but the voters have to pick no more than 3 of you. So I'm going to ask you to start with Rosa, then Pat, then Robert, then Eli, and then James in 2 minutes. And I'm going to ask you to tell the voters out there watching why they should cast one of those ballots for you. Rosa.
Well, with me and those who know me, I will always be honest and frank, even if I get a strange look afterwards. And I think that being sort of I'm from a different coast. I'm not your typical demographic of Corte Madera, which is not a reason specifically to vote for me, but it's just a different perspective. And I think that my devotion and love for the people of Corte Madera and for Corte Madera itself, I think I've put in some time and put in some energy, and I really feel like, this is my home. And this is at a time where we look around us and there are so many things we can't fix and we can't affect that we wish we could, that, people are suffering, people have lack of the basics that they need. And it just means a lot to me that I can, in my own little corner, be instrumental in making this town better, welcoming the new people, embracing and taking care of the older people. So I don't think you could do pretty bad if you voted for me.
Rosa, thank you indeed. Pat.
In closing, I would like to say first how
Grateful I am to be participating in an actual small town democracy at this time in our country's history, and a town led by so many good and caring people. We are fortunate. I feel like I have accomplished a lot for Corte Madera since we moved here 30 years ago from Chicago, but I'm not running because I think I deserve it. I'm running because I want to do more. I'm very excited about Corte Madera's future. We are an outlier town that is doing amazing things, and there's a momentum building. It reminds me of when the Beautification Committee first planted all those daffodils that first fall, and we forgot all about them, and then they burst into bloom the next spring, and you could almost feel a beautiful new energy taking over the town. And I didn't really realize until I looked back that I wasn't really into beautification so much as building community. I believe that the frequency and quality of our connectivity with one another on our streets, in our neighborhoods, and in our public gathering places has a big impact on our well-being. And this isn't just true for chronic extroverts like myself, but it's for all who resonate with a song that's often stuck in my head, which is, "The more we get together, the happier we'll be." So in that spirit, I would like to invite all voters to Zinn's next Wednesday night, October 12th, from 6 until 8 p.m. Wine and free snacks while supplies last. And I want to have some great conversations about the future of Corte Madera. You have now heard from me, and I want to now hear what your concerns and ideas are. So come talk about how together we can make great things happen for Corte Madera. Hope to see many of you on Wednesday. And I have a couple seconds left, so I would like to do a last thank you to Bob Ravazio for all of his contributions to the town of Corte Madera.
Pat Ravazio, thank you very much. Robert Lucarni.
Thank you for having me on this meeting this evening. Yeah, Corte Madera, for me, it represents the best of what the Bay Area has to offer. I'm a Bay Area native. I feel blessed with the opportunity to raise my family here. During the day, I'm a coin-operated engineer. I want to be a community-operated servant to the great residents of this town. And if I'm elected to town council, I plan to give it my 100% for every town council meeting. So that's 90+ meetings throughout the 4-year term. I promise, I'm excited to do all my homework, all the community involvement that comes with the position. It would be a great honor to serve this council and tackle initiatives that matter most to this community with commitment and dedication. I want to bring my critical thinking, sound judgment, and decisive leadership to the council. It would be a great honor to serve this community, and I ask for your vote this November. Thank you.
Robert, thank you. Eli Beckman.
Well, first, I want to thank the Corte Madera Chamber of Commerce and our moderator for putting this on tonight, and to everyone who's tuned in for taking the time to join us. We've accomplished a lot over the last 4 years. It's been a pleasure to serve on your town council, including as mayor at the height of COVID. We've marshaled a successful response to the pandemic. We've made major progress on climate change. We've turned around the town's finances. I'm running for re-election because we have a lot of momentum, but we also have some major challenges on the horizon, and I want to be a part of helping our community respond and overcome those challenges. I'm endorsed by Congressman Jared Huffman, Senator Mike McGuire, the Marin IJ, the Sierra Club, Marin Democrats, the Marin Professional Firefighters, the Marin Women's PAC, the North Bay Labor Council, the entire Marin County Board of Supervisors, and many, many more, including many beloved members of our community. I'm excited to continue serving our community, and I humbly ask for your vote this fall. Thank you.
Eli Beckman, thank you. James Andrews.
Okay, yes, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Spotswood, and the Chamber of Commerce, Stan, and Carla Condon, former mayor. What I plan to bring to town council was my continued financial expertise. Also, a sense of urgency about solving some of the big ticket items like sea level rise solutions and so on. I have a sense that when COVID hit, everything shut down, and we haven't really been getting back up to speed with the momentum that we had prior to COVID hitting. And I believe we need to reinvigorate ourselves in terms of actually working on solving problems as opposed to analyzing, as opposed to having meetings to have meetings, which is sort of the normal way Marin plans to deal with problems. I like the old Corte Madera strategy of we analyze the problem, we come up with a solution, then we implement it. While Marin, they study it again. And so if I'm on council, I will be pushing a sense of urgency that, you know, we've got the budget situation and the pension situation sorted out. Now we've got to work about town infrastructure and dealing with the environmental risks. And that's what I will be concentrating on.
James, thank you. And a compliment to all five of you. I write about every town and jurisdiction in Marin. The hardest thing we have is to recruit first-rate people to run for local office. This is how the system works. You stood up and put yourself on the line by running for council. And for the folks out there should know, this is not a paid position. They receive a tiny little stipend. The time is not proportionate to the stipend, I assure you. So I just, on behalf of the public, want to thank each of the five of you for standing up and doing your part. Corte Madera has really become a really model town, but it only stays that way if quality people like yourself continue to run. And I tell everybody out there, think about it next time yourselves, or maybe volunteer for a commission. Thank you again. It was a pleasure to be here with the Corte Madera Chamber of Commerce and former Mayor Condon.
Thank you, candidates. After tonight's presentation, it is evident that all five candidates are intelligent, caring, knowledgeable, and passionate about our community, and that the voters of Corte Madera are going to have a very tough choice to make. I want to thank, again, Carla Condon, our timekeeper, our moderator, Dick Spotswood, all the candidates, the town staff, and most importantly, I want to thank Julie Kritzberger, the Chamber's executive director, who put this all together. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, community, and have a good night, everyone.
And vote.
Good night.
And vote. Thank you.
Thank you.